developers, but in the artistic field, for me, it's really, really unusual. So I think it was really a nice approach to open your practice as a graphic designer. So after the UI design, I wish here to talk about typography, and I would like to talk about Velveteen Type Foundry and OSP Foundry. I like their work, and I use their font families. I will give you a few examples of VTF and the OSP. So there are two small foundries. You can download the fonts, you can use them, and there are some fonts on GitHub repositories. So you can download the fonts, you can create your own version and distribute your own versions. And in this case, I advise you to look at the README file, because there are different licenses in open source. In our work, we have to choose font families for websites and for apps. And what can we choose? So we can pay a font in a foundry, and thus we pay the work of typographers, and they are really, really beautiful typefaces. And then you also have free fonts. Some are properly drawn and others are less properly drawn. And in this free fonts, you have the open source fonts. Here I'm giving you two examples from Velveteen Type Foundries. First, you see the Fengardo, which is used for the Élysée website. This is the presidential services website. And here you have the Helmand, which is used for a theater in the city of Lyon. Why is it interesting to use open source fonts here? I would say that first you have a quality of the drawn typefaces because of the mastery and because of the experience. They are really, for me, remarkable typefaces. And then, for example, here, there are also typographers who are designers, artists, who have an experimental approach and who really push the limits and question their tools, they question their practice. And for example, here, for open source publishing, the typefaces have really particular appearance, and it creates a really specific atmosphere for your website, for example. And I think when we use open fonts, we also fight against uniformity, because mostly we use Roboto, we use Open Source, we use Source Pro. And here, for me, it's really refreshing to see new typefaces and unexpected design. I would like some other words about what it also brings to us to use open fonts. In this case, for example, if you choose VTF or OSP fonts, it's for me, it's really a strong artist choice from you. Because you also support their open approach, and you can create your own versions and distribute it, so you become an actor and actress of the open source field, and it's really great for me to jump in this field. And also, as associations, as public organization, or as freelance designer, if you don't have any budget to buy a typeface, I think it's really a good alternative for you. Look at these fonts and see if there's something that you can use. So, what else about these two foundries? VTF and OSP, which is a Brussels organization, they apply to give a talk estimate to print this year, but unfortunately they won't give it. So they also give workshops. So here you have the Font Funk Fork workshops, and you were invited to create your own versions of the Cooper Hewitt. During 2 days, they accompany you to create your own versions, and on Sunday evening, everyone shows its results. Here you have a few examples. So if you have a typeface drawing basis, I do recommend you to follow in Brussels OSP workshops, and VTF it's more in France and in Paris. Otherwise, just go there, discuss with them, look at the results, and that's what I did 2 years ago. To finish with part, I would like to say a few words about originality and copy. So these are the logos of copyright and copyleft. And maybe in the audience, designers might think, I won't share my design, I won't share my work because it's my original work, and I would understand, I do understand. But you could open a selection of your projects, because if you share your techniques, the designers who will use it will create something completely different. And developers are used to help each other. They give a technical help, which is only a starting point. And when you share your techniques, you allow creativity and you allow everyone to progress. So for me, we really add skills, knowledge, and intelligence. And I think it's really, for designers, it can only be enriching for us. And when you really read that you have helped or inspired someone, I think it's really rewarding. So we saw how designers share their work. Now we will see how an organization can share the creative process. And I wish to talk about Mozilla rebranding. My goal here is not to give my opinion about the logos. What I want to point here is how designers can commit in this open process. In this case, how do we share design process? What are the raised questions? And how to think further? In June 2016, Mozilla launched an open consultation, and maybe you read things about it, for the new logo and the new identity during one of the biannual international meeting, and this was in London. So I think here you can see the process was open to everyone. It was more than 1,200 people. Everyone can read the process, and you also can give feedback. So for me, it was a first remarkable point. Then we can follow the creative process and Zen process on their blog. And the third point is that they open the 7 logo suggestion to the comments. So here you have the first 7 concepts. I read lots of comments from all over the world, people saying, I like this one because it's what Mozilla represents for me, and I don't like this one because. What I wish to remind here is that the comments are based on the knowledge, the experience, and the culture of everyone, and it's not so easy to judge a logo. Because in this case, first it will be used for years, and in this case, it's for a big and important organization and brand. And just to compare it to something else, I will give you a comparison in the architecture field. If you ask the audience to choose a building in the architecture contest, on which criteria will the public be able to judge and to decide if this building or this building will be acceptable? Because in architecture, you studied resistance to the materials, drawing techniques, you have art history, architecture history, and you design projects. And these points make that you are a little bit more capable than something else to judge a building. And for me, it's the same in graphic design. And whatever field it is, you have to acquire technique and artistic basis to judge, to assess the field and what you are looking at. So to come back at the 7 concepts, I would like to give some tips for non-designers to look at them. So for example, when you have this, the question you can have is, does it work in high scale for tarpaulin, for example? Does it work in small scales? Does it work in colors, and does it work in black and white? What are all the meanings each of them conveys? Which is the rhythm in each of them? Are there tensions between the empty and the filled parts? Also, how is it integrated in the graphic history? Does it add something new? Is it too common? Is it too ordinary? And does it respond to your client requests? Because here you have Mozilla, but you also have its users. users in all over the world and volunteers in all over the world. So for me, in this case, it's really, really difficult to create and to judge these suggestions. This use case reinforced my feeling that we do need a toolbox to learn to look at them. We need designers to share our knowledge, and so the way I see how designers can commit in this case is that share with your family, with your colleagues, with your friend, your knowledge. How do you look at these logos? Which are the qualities and the weaknesses of each of them, and which one is acceptable and which one is not? And that's what I wanted to point out here. So, talking about a toolbox, I will here give you tips to share design practice with your team. UI designers used to say, I don't understand. The outcome is different from my design. And when you ask for the reason why, the answer is, the answer is, yes, but it works, good enough. I would say no. Design is not about good enough, because designers don't put in a hit and miss way graphic elements. We don't throw in the air elements that would just drop on a page and create a random composition. For me, design is to answer to a particular purpose by offering an aesthetic basis. By offering aesthetic quality and based on research and reflection. And that's why our design is strong and justified. And so why do some developers feel free to modify our design? Here, I would like to point out one reason, and for me, I think there might be a lack of understanding of what design is and what it brings. So for me, when designers give a design, it's based on what they have learned, on their researches and their practice. And I would like to go back to the etymology of the word design. So it comes from the Latin word designum, the mark, the sign. And unfortunately, in French, in the 18th century, we lost the dessin, the purpose, the ID part, and we only kept the dessin, the drawing part. So unfortunately, we lost it in French. But in English, we really have the ID and the drawing, the purpose and the drawing. That's why when we give a design, they are meant decision and based on theory, on aesthetic sense that we do develop during our studies and during our practice. So for me, we have to complement each other to create the best project that we can. Here I will give you some tips to share your design practice with your team, because we don't have time to talk about design principles and color principles, for example. So I would say that before showing any mock-up and design, you should introduce your graphic and artistic choices, so you give context to your stakeholders to get on board. Then, if in a discussion you are told, okay, I don't like it, make it bigger, make it yellow and put it here, use the question why. Then you force your interlocutors to present their arguments, and then you can explain to them that their concerns are not really justified. And the last point I would give here is pin your wireframes, your mock-up and your design to the wall, so everyone can access it. You will trigger discussion and thoughts. The team will have common steps and goals. And also you avoid teammates to discover the design only when it's online, because it's really hurtful for me. So, it's nearly the end. I give you some links and references, so if you wish to have a look at the Ricardo Vasquez videos, you just search for The Hour of Design on YouTube. You have Velveteen Type Foundry, OSP Foundry. I don't have time, but if you wish to read something about originality and copy, I advise you this book from Walter Benjamin. You have the Blogspot from Mozilla. And if you wish, you have also the Gestalt theory, so you can have some information here. So I hope it was helpful as an introduction to open design, even if you're maybe mostly designers here. I hope that you have some tips and some tools and food for thought to go further and maybe change the way we design, the way we collaborate, the way we work together, and the way we would communicate the design process. Thank you. Am I okay? You have 10 minutes. Yes.
I have one. Thank you for your talk. It was interesting. I have a question. It's more like a philosophical question, I don't know. I'm not a graphic designer, and I wonder, in open source, you can change code and many people can contribute to that. I also assume that usability design also can be a product of collaborative ideas, and many people can adjust it. Do you think it can work when it comes to logo design or any other artwork? Do you think there could be some collaboration?
I'm sorry. When we do collaborate in many fields, it can work. And your question is about usability and logo. If we work together on a project.
No, but when it comes to code and usability,
yes,
it's possible.
But about logos,
the logo
yes, that's what we work together. This is a personal point of view for me. When we create a logo, we can't be more than two. It's really personal. It's really difficult because for me we can't. I believe that we can work together really properly when we are two. Because when I worked as a print graphic designers, to work together, you have to share common how do you say it? Knowledge, skill, and artistic basis. So first, if you work with someone that don't share this with you, it's really hard. And the case where I see that it works is when the people is really a kind of, how do you say in English, symbiosis. We really can work together, we talk together, we understand each other just by drawing, for example. And for me personally, I don't believe in logos created by, I don't know, 20 people. It's personal, but we can discuss more about it. Maybe some other of you.
It can be open, but not open source.
Only logos, for me, the collaborative process, when you are really, there are many people, it's, I think, really hard. You really have to understand each other and you have to make compromises. So when you have, for example, 10 people, I think it's really difficult.
So my question would be, I really like your idea that you say the most important thing is to understand it's not about the aesthetics, it's about the purpose first and then like what you make out of it. And that the common problem is that people don't know about design that much, right? So they go into the discussion and they say, oh, that looks fancy.
Yes.
And my question is, do you think as designers, do we have to be more self-reflecting and more critical the way we talk about design to others? Because I feel sometimes we fall into this trap as well. Like we say, oh, I really like his work, and then we stop. We don't say why we like it and say, he explained, like this is the concept. So kind of in order to make this better, we have to talk to people about it like we would talk with other designers. Like we have to show them, hey, yeah, this looks nice, but like.
Yeah, so the question is, as designers, do we also have a critical attitude and to question maybe our logos, our design, etc. And yes, I agree totally with you, because if we only give our designs and we stop here without explaining why we made these choices, etc., in fact, we keep our knowledge for us. And that's why I talk about the toolbox and the tips. It's if we share our skills, our knowledge, and our choices, first we make everyone understand it. And for example, for me, if decision makers had a better visual culture, we wouldn't suffer such low quality interfaces, for example. And so also between different work fields, if we share our knowledge with developers, with, I don't know, marketing team, etc., and if we explain that, okay, maybe you find this great, but now let me explain you why I did this, and because of design principles, composition principles, theory of colors, etc. And I think that as designers, we really should open up practice and explain what we did and why we did it, because it's kind of, we just share knowledge and we share culture, and it's really, really important for me. It's really, I believe in education, really. And if we keep it just for designers, we'll have a lack of understanding between the public, but also with other people in your team and with stakeholders. So I completely agree with you. We also have to have a critical attitude with our work.
Well, thank you very much, Mylène.
Thank you.